Dad kicked me out because of my brother and Sil. Now she took everything and kicked them out. I never thought I'd be sharing my family drama on Reddit, but here I am, feeling lost and betrayed by the people I thought I could always count on. I'm a 25-year-old guy living with my older brother, 30, his wife Sarah, 28, and our dad, 55. In our family home. My mom passed away when I was 9, which was a devastating blow to our family. Dad threw himself into his work after that, running the construction business he'd started from scratch about 30 years ago. Growing up without mom was tough. Dad did his best, but he was often absent, working long hours to keep the business afloat. My brother stepped up in many ways, becoming a sort of father figure to me. We were close back then, but things changed as we grew older. 3 years ago, my brother got married to Sarah. At first, I was excited to have a sister-in-law. I thought she might bring some of that feminine energy back into our very male-dominated household. But my hopes were quickly dashed. Sarah doesn't work and stays at home, which wouldn't be an issue if she contributed in other ways. Instead, she spends most of her time shopping, gossiping with her friends, and, as I've come to realize, manipulating my family. It started subtly. Sarah would make little comments here and there, always when no one else was around. She'd imply that I wasn't pulling my weight around the house or that I was taking advantage of Dad's generosity. At first, I brushed it off, thinking she was just adjusting to the family dynamic. But over time, it became clear that she was systematically trying to turn my family against me. I remember one incident clearly. It was my brother's birthday, and I had saved up for months from my part-time job to buy him a new watch he'd been eyeing. When I gave it to him, Sarah immediately said, "Oh, that's so sweet of you to spend your allowance on your brother." I was hurt because I had actually worked extra shifts to afford it. But before I could say anything, she added, "It's not like you have any other expenses, living here for free and all." Her tone was sweet, but her words were cutting. My brother, caught up in the excitement of his gift, didn't seem to notice the exchange. Another time, I overheard her telling my brother that I was probably jealous of their relationship and that's why I was always moody around them. The truth was, I was just tired from juggling college and my job. I wanted to confront her, but I knew it would be my word against hers, and she had already wormed her way into everyone's good graces. The worst part is, my dad seems to believe everything Sarah says. He's always supported my brother more, even before Sarah came into the picture. When we were kids, my brother was the star athlete, and I was more into academics. Dad never missed a single one of my brother's games, but he rarely showed up for my debate competitions or science fairs. I tried not to let it bother me, telling myself that Dad was just more interested in sports. But now, with Sarah constantly singing my brother's praises and subtly putting me down, the favoritism has become impossible to ignore. Now, it's like I've become invisible in my own home. I'm never asked for my opinion on anything important. When Dad discusses the business, it's always with my brother, even though I'm the one studying business management in college. I've tried to contribute ideas, but they're usually dismissed or ignored. It's frustrating because I can see areas where the business could improve, but no one seems interested in what I have to say. Last month, I decided to introduce my girlfriend, Emma, to my family. We've been dating for a year, and things are getting serious. Emma comes from a middle-class family, works part-time as a barista while studying nursing, and is one of the kindest people I know. I was nervous about the dinner, knowing how judgmental Sarah can be, but I hoped that Emma's sweet nature would win them over. I couldn't have been more wrong. The dinner was a disaster from start to finish. Sarah kept making snide comments throughout. When Emma arrived, Sarah looked her up and down and said, "Oh, how nice to dress up for dinner." I remember when I used to shop at places like that. Emma, who had worn her best dress for the occasion, looked crushed. During the meal, Sarah asked Emma where she bought her dress, and when Emma said it was from a local boutique, Sarah replied, "Oh, how quaint. I guess not everyone can afford designer labels." Later, she accidentally spilled wine on Emma's dress and made a big show of offering one of her own expensive dresses as a replacement. Emma politely declined, but I could see how uncomfortable she was. The conversation at dinner was no better. Every time Emma tried to join in, Sarah would talk over her or change the subject. When Emma mentioned her nursing studies, Sarah said, "Oh, that's such a noble profession. It must be so rewarding to know you'll always have job security, even if the pay isn't great." The condescension in her voice was clear. After Emma left, visibly upset despite her attempts to hide it, Sarah cornered me in the kitchen. She said, "Look, I know you think you like this girl, but let's be realistic. She's not from our world. Do you really think she can fit into our lifestyle? You should be looking for someone more suitable." I was furious, but before I could respond, she'd already left the kitchen and was telling everyone else her opinions. I heard her telling my dad and brother that Emma wasn't worthy of our status and that I should forget about her. She went on about how Emma wouldn't understand our family's social obligations and how it would be embarrassing to bring her to business events. The next day, I tried to talk to my dad about it. I was hoping he'd see through Sarah's act and stand up for me and Emma. To my shock, he agreed with Sarah. He said, "Son, I think Sarah has a point. You should consider looking for someone else. Someone who understands our world better. Emma seems nice, but is she really the kind of girl you want to bring to business dinners? Think about your future." That was the last straw. I exploded, telling him how he's always supported my brother in everything. I reminded him of all the times he'd backed my brother's decisions, no matter how questionable they were. Like when my brother decided to drop out of college to find himself and traveled around Europe for a year on Dad's dime. He blew through thousands of dollars, partying and experiencing life, while I worked part-time jobs to save for my own education. When he came back, Dad welcomed him with open arms, no questions asked. Or when he invested a huge chunk of Dad's money in his friend's startup that predictably failed within 6 months. It was a half-baked idea for a social media app that no one needed, but my brother was convinced it would be the next big thing. When it failed, Dad just patted him on the back and said, "It's okay, you're learning." Meanwhile, when I asked for help with my college tuition, I was told to take out loans like everyone else. But me? I've always played by the rules. I'm doing well in college, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working part-time to cover my expenses. I've never asked for anything extra. I've been trying to learn about the family business, hoping to contribute after I graduate. And the one time I bring home someone I care about, someone who shares my values and work ethic, everyone jumps to judge her. I also pointed out that Sarah herself isn't from some high society family. Her parents own a small diner in our hometown. There's nothing wrong with that, but her attitude of superiority is completely baseless. She acts like she was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. But I remember when she first started dating my brother. She was sweet and down to earth then. It's like she's created this whole new persona since marrying into our family. My outburst didn't go over well. My brother and Sarah came downstairs, having overheard everything. They were livid. Sarah was crying crocodile tears, saying how she's always tried to be a good sister-in-law and how ungrateful I was. She wailed about how she only wanted what was best for the family and how hurt she was that I would attack her like this. My brother was red-faced with anger. He yelled at me, saying I had no right to speak to his wife that way. He brought up every little mistake I'd ever made, every time I disappointed Dad, twisting things to make me sound like a constant screw-up. It was like he'd forgotten all the good times we'd had, all the times I'd supported him. They gave Dad an ultimatum: either they would stay in the house, or I would. To my utter disbelief and heartbreak, Dad chose them. He said, "I think it's best if you move out for a while. Cool off, think about things. Maybe some time away will help you appreciate what you have here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own father, choosing my manipulative sister-in-law over his own son. My brother, who I'd looked up to for so long, now treating me like an enemy. It felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. So here I am, writing this from a cheap motel room, trying to figure out what to do next. I've called Emma, and she's been incredibly supportive despite how terribly my family treated her. She's offered to let me stay with her and her roommate until I figure things out. I'm grateful for her, but I also feel guilty for dragging her into this mess. I'm hurt, angry, and confused. Part of me wants to cut all ties with my family and never look back. Another part hopes that Dad will come to his senses and reach out. I keep checking my phone, hoping for a message from my brother saying this was all a big misunderstanding. But so far, silence. I don't know what to do next. I have some savings, but not enough to support myself for long. I'm worried about how this will affect my studies. Part of me wants to drop out and just start working full-time, but I know that's probably not the smart move long-term. I guess I'm looking for advice, support, maybe just a listening ear. Has anyone else dealt with toxic family dynamics like this? How did you cope? Is there any coming back from something like this? Or should I just accept that this is the end of my relationship with my family? Any advice would be appreciated. Update: it's been 3 years since my original post, and to say a lot has changed would be an understatement. I want to start by thanking everyone who offered advice and support back then. Your words meant more to me than you could know, and they gave me the strength to push forward when things seemed darkest. After I left home, things were tough for a while. I moved in with Emma and her roommate temporarily. It was a tiny 2-bedroom apartment, and I slept on their couch for the first month. I felt guilty for imposing, but Emma was incredibly supportive. She kept reminding me that relationships are about being there for each other in good times and bad. I had to drop out of college for a semester because I couldn't afford the tuition. It was a hard decision, but I knew I needed to focus on survival first. I picked up 2 jobs, one at a local coffee shop in the mornings and another at a call center in the evenings. The coffee shop job was physically demanding, with early mornings and constant movement. The call center job was mentally draining, dealing with angry customers and meeting strict quotas. There were days when I'd work from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., collapsing into bed only to do it all over again the next day. It was exhausting, but it allowed me to save up enough to rent a small studio apartment after a few months. It wasn't much, just a single room with a kitchenette and a bathroom that was barely big enough to turn around in. But it was mine, and it felt like the first step towards independence. Emma and I went through some rough patches during this time. The stress of my situation put a strain on our relationship. There were times when I pushed her away, feeling like I wasn't good good enough for her. I was ashamed of my tiny apartment, my struggle to make ends meet. I'd cancel dates because I couldn't afford to go out, or because I was too exhausted from work. There were fights, tears, moments when I thought she'd finally had enough and would leave. But Emma surprised me. She stuck by me, always reminding me of my worth. She'd bring me dinner when I was working late, help me study for the online classes I was taking to keep up with my education, and always had words of encouragement when I felt like giving up. She'd tell me stories about her patients at the hospital where she was doing her nursing clinicals, reminding me that everyone has struggles and that it's okay to lean on others sometimes. After 6 months of working nonstop, I was able to re-enroll in college. I also applied for every scholarship and grant I could find. My grades had always been good, and thankfully, that paid off. I managed to secure a partial scholarship that eased my financial burden significantly. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but it meant I could cut back on my work hours and focus more on my studies. Things started looking up in my second year away from home. One of my professors, Dr. Anderson, took notice of my hard work and dedication. She recommended me for an internship at a prestigious tech company, praising my problem-solving skills and work ethic. The internship was unpaid, but I saw it as an opportunity I couldn't pass up. I quit my coffee shop job, kept the evening call center gig, and spent my days at the internship. Those were some of the most challenging months of my life. I was constantly exhausted, surviving on little sleep and lots of coffee. My tiny apartment became a mess as I barely had time to clean. I ate cheap, unhealthy food because I didn't have the energy to cook. There were nights when I'd sit on my bed, looking at my cramped surroundings, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake. But I was determined to prove myself. I stayed late at the internship, took on extra projects, and made sure to network with everyone I could. I soaked up knowledge like a sponge, learning about new technologies, business strategies, and corporate culture. I volunteered for the tasks no one else wanted, showed up early, and always had a positive attitude despite my exhaustion. My hard work paid off. At the end of the internship, my supervisor called me into his office. I was nervous, thinking maybe I'd done something wrong. Instead, he offered me a part-time position that I could balance with my studies. The pay was good enough that I could quit the call center job and focus on my career and education. I nearly cried with relief and gratitude. Emma was my rock through all of this. She'd bring me dinner when I was working late, help me study for exams, and always had words of encouragement when I felt like giving up. We had our share of arguments, usually when I was stressed and taking it out on her, but we always managed to work through them. She taught me the importance of communication, of sharing my feelings instead of bottling them up. After I graduated, the tech company offered me a full-time position. I've been there for a year now, and I've already received one promotion. The work is challenging but rewarding, and I finally feel like I'm building a career I can be proud of. I'm no longer living paycheck to paycheck. I've moved into a nicer apartment, started building my savings, and even treated Emma to a weekend getaway to thank her for everything she's done for me. Emma and I are still together, stronger than ever. We've been doing long distance for the past year as she completed her nursing residency in our hometown. It hasn't been easy, but we've made it work with regular video calls and visits whenever possible. She's planning to move here next month, and we're talking about getting married by the end of this year. The thought of proposing both excites and terrifies me, but I know she's the one I want to spend my life with. I hadn't heard from my family since I left, and honestly, I had made peace with that. I focused on building my own life and creating my own definition of family with Emma and the close friends I've made. I have a small but tight-knit group of friends now, colleagues from work, people I met through volunteering at a local shelter, and some of Emma's nursing friends. We have game nights, weekend barbecues, and they've become the support system I always wished for. But last week, I received a call that turned my world upside down again. It was from my cousin, Alex. I was surprised to hear from him, as we were never particularly close. What he told me left me speechless. Apparently, things back home had gone from bad to worse after I left. Sarah, my sister-in-law, turned out to be even more manipulative than I had realized. According to Alex, she first set her sights on my father. She would spend hours listening to him, making him feel important and understood. She'd cook his favorite meals, laugh at his jokes, and slowly became the daughter he never had. All the while, she was working on isolating him from the rest of the family. She'd make excuses for why he couldn't attend family gatherings, saying he was too busy or too tired. She convinced him that certain family members were only after his money. She'd intercept phone calls and emails, filtering what information reached him. Slowly but surely, she became his sole confidant and advisor. Once she had my father firmly under her influence, she started planting seeds of doubt about my brother. She'd leave evidence of fake affairs, like lipstick-stained collars or mysterious receipts. She'd accidentally leave her phone open to suspicious text messages, making it seem like my brother was cheating. My brother, who had always been a bit of a flirt, made it easy for her to paint him as a cheater. She'd create scenarios where he'd be alone with female employees, then spin tales of inappropriate behavior to my father. Sarah then convinced convinced my father to change his will, leaving everything to her to protect the family assets. She claimed she would make sure everything was distributed fairly. She played on his fears of the business being mismanaged or the family fortune being squandered. My father, completely taken in by her act, agreed. With the new will in place, Sarah filed for divorce, citing my brother's infidelity. She presented all the evidence she had collected, and my brother, caught off guard, couldn't defend himself effectively. The divorce was messy and public, leaving my brother's reputation in tatters. Sarah's crocodile tears and claims of being a betrayed, devoted wife won her sympathy from the judge and the community. In the aftermath, Sarah walked away with nearly everything. The family home, the business, the savings, all of it went to her. My father, finally seeing Sarah's true colors, tried to contest the will, but it was too late. Sarah had covered her tracks well, and she had the best lawyers money could buy, our family's money, ironically. Now, according to Alex, both my father and brother are essentially homeless. They're too ashamed to reach out to me or other family members for help. My once successful father is working as a night security guard, while my brother is doing odd jobs to make ends meet. They're living in a small, run-down apartment on the outskirts of town, a far cry from the luxury they once enjoyed. Alex said he thought I should know, that maybe I could help somehow. He mentioned that he's tried to offer assistance, but both my father and brother are too proud to accept it. They feel guilty for how they treated me and believe they deserve their current situation. Hearing all this, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me felt a twisted sense of justice. They chose Sarah over me, and look where it got them. The hurt and betrayal I felt 3 years ago came rushing back. I remembered the cold dismissal, the harsh words, the way they'd so easily discarded me for Sarah's manipulations. Another part of me felt sorry for them, despite everything that happened. I thought about my father, who built his business from nothing, now reduced to working night shifts. I thought about my brother, who, for all his faults, had been my protector and friend for many years of our childhood. It was hard to reconcile these images with the people who had hurt me so deeply. I told Alex that I'm happy with my life now. I have a good job, a wonderful girlfriend, and plans for the future. I don't want to get involved in their drama again. Maybe that makes me a bad person, but I can't bring myself to care about people who so easily discarded me. The thought of reaching out to them, of opening myself up to potential hurt again, makes me anxious. Emma, ever compassionate, thinks I should at least hear them out if they ever decide to contact me. She believes in second chances, in the power of forgiveness. She gently reminded me of how she stood by me during my lowest points, suggesting that perhaps I could offer the same kindness to my family. But she also emphasized that it's my decision, and she'll support me either way. I'm torn. On one hand, I've worked hard to build this new life, to heal from the pain they caused. I'm finally in a good place, both personally and professionally. Do I really want to risk all that by letting them back in? What if it's just another opportunity for them to hurt me? On the other hand, they're still my family. Despite everything, there's a part of me that misses them, that wishes things could go back to the way they were before Sarah entered our lives. I think about the good times, fishing trips with Dad, playing video games with my brother late into the night, family dinners where we'd laugh and share stories. Can those moments ever outweigh the pain of their betrayal? So here I am, once again turning to Reddit for advice. Am I wrong for not wanting to help my family? Should I reach out to them? Or should I continue focusing on the life and family I'm building for myself? I'm torn between my lingering sense of family obligation and my desire to protect the peace and happiness I've worked so hard to achieve. If I do decide to reach out, how should I go about it? What boundaries should I set? And how do I protect myself emotionally while still offering help? I know no one can make this decision for me, but I would appreciate any insights or similar experiences you might be willing to share. How do you forgive family members who've hurt you deeply? Is it even possible to rebuild trust after such a betrayal? Thank you for reading this far. Writing this out has been cathartic in a way, forcing me to confront feelings I've been trying to ignore. Whatever happens, I'm grateful for this community and the support you've shown me over the years. Any thoughts or advice would be greatly appreciated.